Many of us struggle with questions of identity. Who am I? What is my real self? The Buddha identified 3 deeply ingrained ways that we cling to our identity. He termed these, this is mine, this I am, and this is myself. But what do these mean and how do they function psychologically? In this video, we'll look at each of these in turn, with help from an old commentary that links each of them to a different kind of mental defilement. We'll explore what they mean and how we can begin to practice letting them go. First, let's turn to these 3 clingings. In a recent essay on one early sutta, the scholar Peat notes that when talking about these 3 forms of clinging, this is mine, this I am, this is myself, that he turns to an early commentary. And I'll leave a link to Peat's essay down below in the notes if you want to read what he has to say. But basically, this commentarial interpretation takes each of these 3 clingings as representative of one of the mental defilements or another. We can begin with the first one, this is mine. This, the commentary says, is linked to the defilement of craving, of always wanting and needing more. Here we take possessions of things, of our relationships, of objects around us, of our experiences, of our feelings, of our thoughts, and we consider them all to be ours, to be our possessions. And even more subtly, we can think of our pains, our sufferings, our traumas as being ours, as things that we cling to and hold on to, as making up who we really are. My reputation, my political opinion, all of these kinds of things that we feel we have ownership over. This is the language of ownership, as I say. That is, we either try to possess and control what we want, or we believe we already possess and control these things. The problem here is when we lose control over them, when we lose possession of them, when things don't go the way we want with respect to these things that we believe we own, then we suffer. The second one of these clingings is related to the notion, this I am. And this is related to the defilement of conceit, that is, this comparing mind. Now, we can understand this in many ways, but one way to understand it is it relates this I to a kind of a performance or image that we have of ourselves, of our role in a social context, of being someone, as compared to those around us. I'm better than, I'm worse than, I'm the same as. These kinds of thoughts, these kinds of clingings, help to keep this sense of self intact. For example, we may think, I'm a success, or I'm a failure, or we might think, I'm a doctor, I'm a parent, I'm a successful tennis player. I'm the sort of person who XYZ, I'm not the sort of person who XYZ. The problem is that all of these performative feelings of being someone are unstable. They invite constant stress as we measure ourselves all the time against other people to figure out where we are in this social context. Being above, being below, being the same, things change over time. For example, we may think of ourselves as a champion at some particular sport, but then we get injured and we're no longer able to perform at the same level. Then we suffer, not simply because of the pain of the injury, but because of the pain of the loss of this sense of self, this I, this role that we're undertaking. The third of these clingings is the clinging to this is myself. And the commentary says that this form of clinging is related to the defilement of what are known as views. That is, the intellectual construction of a sort of idea, concept of who we really are. So we might say, I feel that I really am an eternal soul trapped in a body. We might say, I have this theory that what I am is just my physical body and nothing else. We may have a theory of psychological identity where we say, My theory is that myself is my mind, or my consciousness, or my experiences, or my thought processes. Now, the problem with clinging to these kinds of views is that they condition disagreement and argument, dispute, and hence suffering. Now, why is that? It's because we may cling to our own view, but whenever we get into conversation with somebody, we'll find out that they have a different view. And then we feel we have to support our view against theirs and talk about why their view is incorrect and why our view is correct. That is, we formulate a view of self, this is myself, and then we hold it as a truth for everybody. And not everybody will agree. Second, why did the Buddha teach about these three kinds of clinging? Well, he didn't teach about these three kinds of clinging to concepts of self in order to get us to find a better conception of self to cling to. That would not be his goal. Rather, his goal was for us to see through all of these kinds of constructions of a self as essentially exercises in various kinds of cognitive construction, in creating conventions. Each of the three clingings is related to a different mental habit that we have. The first one is related to this habit of clinging, that is the need to possess things. The second one, to conceit, that is this need to compare ourselves to other people, other beings around us. And the third, views, is related to the mental need to explain things. So we have to come up with a cognitive explanation. Now, by understanding how these three kinds of clinging to a self operate, we can help to loosen their grip upon us and see through them. Third, I want to turn to some practical approaches of letting go of these clingings, these three clingings. So we'll take each in turn. The first of these clingings, this craving of this is mine, we can help give that up through a practice of renunciation and generosity. That is, instead of clinging to things around us, we undertake a process of being generous, of giving these things away. We can be mindful of when attachments arise and ask ourselves, interrogate ourselves about whether this thing that we're becoming attached to, do we really need it, or can we get along better without it? We can also reflect about the interrelationship of all things, about the fact that we and all things around us are all conditioned by causes and effects, and that therefore nothing is really entirely ever under our control. What I think of as mine is simply another thing under its own causal influences and under constant change and decay. When it comes to conceit, or the comparing mind, this I am, we should try to cultivate a sense of mindfulness of when that comparison or comparing mind arises, when we start to compare ourselves to others and think of ourselves as better or worse or the same. We can try to overcome such tendencies, such role-playing, with a sense of humor about them, with a sense of humility about these kinds of roles, not taking them too seriously, understanding that all of the roles that we play in society are in constant change themselves, reflecting that this someone that we were always trying to be is a different person from day to day, week to week, and year to year. And third, when it comes to views, the notion that this is myself, we can practice trying to hold our beliefs more lightly. Even Buddhist beliefs, even some of our deepest held beliefs. We can practice open inquiry with respect to our beliefs. That is holding to this belief really good for me? Is it really healthy? Is it really skillful for me to cling to this belief? Or instead, is my clinging in this situation to this belief only causing more suffering to myself and others? Third, we can strive to emphasize experience over ideology. Experience is something that at least is open to potential change and variation and learning, whereas ideology tends to be fixed, rigid, and unchanging. Fourth, releasing these three clingings. While these three forms of clinging to a sense of self in one way or another are indeed deeply rooted, they're not completely unshakable. As we begin to see them and understand them as rooted essentially in our defilements of craving, of conceit, and of views, we can begin to see through them and understand where they arise from. The goal here is not to replace one conception of a self with another, but rather to relax around the entire idea of self at all. Relax around the idea that there is a permanent, unchanging self that persists throughout our entire lives, but instead begin to see the way that the self is formed all the time. This is the path to freedom that the Buddha offered. Now, if you want to hear more about the Buddha's ideas of self, I have a whole playlist on this notion of the Buddha's self and non-self, and I'll leave a link to that playlist up here on the screen so you can see more. If you're getting something out of these videos of mine, consider taking a look at my Patreon page, which is linked up here on the screen and down below in the notes, and see if you want to help support the channel and the work that I'm doing here. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next video. And meanwhile, all of you, be well.